Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Weekly Pick'em Show. We're Week 8 on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I am your co-host, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I would like to welcome in my other co-host. First up, Brian Schmidt. How you doing, Schmitty?
Doing good.
And, of course, he's been out for a couple weeks, but he's back now, former Carolina Panther, Tony Pike. How you doing, Tony?
Oh, slowly recovering from the Sunday night debacle that was the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, we'll start off there, Tony. The Bengals were 4-2 going into the game. It was a huge game for them. And my take on it is this. I watched this game, and when you got a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes and you're 3rd and 7, man under is not the best thing to play because he's just going to run for a first down. Or he's going to run up, you're going to come up, he's going to throw a ball behind you. I didn't understand the Tampa 2 dropping Vontaze Burfict 20 yards into coverage like he's a safety. I think the Bengals' problem is still ownership and coaching more than anything else.
Yeah, I just think they were grossly outcoached in that game. And if that's a game that you lose 38-35, I think you walk away okay with that. Going into the Tampa game 4-3, I'd be okay, but when you lose to Pittsburgh how they did and you just get out-coached in every aspect of the way against the Chiefs, it was pre-calculus versus basic math is what it seemed like. Just the matchups that Andy Reid was able to get. Tyreek Hill, the first play of the game, in the slot gets matched up with a safety and Sean Williams. That was a miss. They were just all over the board with mismatches all night. And offense, defense, it was a night to forget quickly, and I hope that the Bengals can with another tough test in Tampa coming up this week.
Well, I'll go back to this. What I said before the Pittsburgh game is I think that Bengals-Steeler game was a determiner on the way the season would go, and it has went south quickly since they've lost that game.
Yeah, and it was the way they lost the Steelers game. It was having a chance to win that, not making the most of your opportunity, and now, you know, as you said, this is a team in Cincinnati that's reeling against an offense in Tampa Bay that can put up points and put up yards. And if you're not able to figure out stuff during this week on a little bit shortened week with the night game, you're going to find yourself 4-4 going into the bye.
Yeah, and I think both of those losses are attributed to coaching. I still don't know why you're going no huddle and trying to speed it up when Pittsburgh and Ben Roethlisberger have 3 timeouts left. And you weren't here last week, so I'll let you address it real quickly. But me and my son are sitting here watching the game, and when there was 1:18 left and they scored a touchdown, neither one of us were happy because we both knew what was coming.
Yeah, it was hard with the Pittsburgh game just because you know what Ben Roethlisberger can do and what he's done his whole career. When you give them over a minute left with 3 timeouts, every person I was with kind of had the similar feeling of holding your breath, hoping that this year could be different. And sure enough, it's the same song and dance we've seen. And until they get over that Pittsburgh hump, which you've seen, that they're not going to regain that division. And now you look coming out of a Pittsburgh bye, you're looking up at Pittsburgh in the division standings again, and they have the tie breaks. It's going to be another tough test.
All right, so, Brian, there's no bad Andruscavage tonight. We know what that means. Number one, we'll have a lot more listeners because we did that one week when he wasn't here. And then on top of that, and I know Matt's listening, so I'm going to give him a hard time even if he's not on the show. So you get your run of this. What are the things that stuck out to you Week 7 of the NFL?
You know, a few things. One, boy, I'll tell you, we kind of, I think maybe me and you, I don't know if Matt said it, I could be wrong, but I think we kind of nailed that Patriots-Bears game was going to be what it was. I didn't think the Bears were going to score 31, but thought it would be a really good game. You know, the Buccaneers-Browns game, I mean, the Browns can't get out of their own way sometimes. It's almost to the point of being comical. Just how bad they are at times. The Rams, to me, are a for real team. And I think the interesting thing is the trade Dallas made with Oakland. I don't feel like a first round pick was worth that in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but I just felt like that was a little bit too much. But great for the Raiders.
This is being set up to go to Vegas, and if you look at this, on the surface, just trading Khalil Mack seemed crazy. But now when they trade, now they're going to have like what, 7? They're going to like 20 of the 27 or 32 picks in the first round, Tony. I don't think when you look at Oakland, if they're blowing this up because they don't think they have what they need and they want to start over, and you've got a coach with a 10-year contract, this may not be so crazy after all.
No, I think they're going to finish with more first-round draft picks than wins this year. And I think it was a brilliant move on their behalf to get a first round of Amari Cooper, who hasn't been producing at all for this team anyway. And it just seems like the theme of the NFL right now are teams that are going to go all in and teams that aren't. And Dallas is trying to see what they have in Dak Prescott and seeing if they have an option for the future. You saw Eli Apple get traded with the Giants today to the Saints. I think that was a different Eli than some people in New York were hoping. And now the Patrick Peterson, I think the team that lands him and what they give up for him is going to be important. But it's the time of the year where you're seeing teams that, hey, we're going to try to start rebuilding with draft picks, to the teams that we're going to try to go win this thing this year.
Now, when you talk about the Giants, and maybe Brian can address this too, there's got to be a breaking point here where you sit Eli and see what the backup can do, because Kyle Lauletta is a guy to me that I think could end up being a decent NFL quarterback. He played at Richmond. I've watched a lot of film on him before the draft last year. I think the kid can play. I think they need to find out if he can play now, because if he can, you don't have to waste a first-round pick on a quarterback, and you can start to build that offensive line a little quicker. What's your take on Lauletta? I'll ask Tony, and then we'll go to Brian.
Well, you're never going to see what you have if you continue with what you got going on with Eli now. I think this is a perfect time to do it because you're still in the heart of the season, although the playoffs are out of the question. I think he's a guy that can manage a team. And what you need to see out of a guy like Lauletta, can you handle New York? Can you handle Odell Beckham and his antics? Can you get the ball? Because that team is a quarterback away right now from, and obviously an offensive line, but you got Saquon Barkley, who's going to be great. You got Odell Beckham, who you just paid all that money. You need to see what you have at quarterback because Eli's not the long-term answer. Even when he has protection in the pocket, he's checking the ball down so early, it's ridiculous to watch. That is a tough team to watch, and really a team now where someone else needs a chance and a fair chance to see what they can do.
So let's talk about Lauletta. What is your opinion on him? Because to me, he looks like a guy that, as you said, can manage the game. He can make the short, intermediate throws. He seems like he's very intelligent. His accuracy on long balls, I don't think is that great. But what's your take on him as a quarterback's coach when you look at him?
Well, I think he's got great feet. I think his feet get him to a lot of his throws. He throws the ball on time. And what he lacks in that deep arm strength, he makes up with his timing and getting the ball out quick. I think he can make all the throws, but again, it's different playing in New York, and you're getting to sit behind Eli is great, but you're coming from a school in Richmond that isn't huge on the market. You're not getting seen every week. Every move you make in New York is going to be analyzed, and I think that's going to be the biggest challenge as he goes forward.
All right, Brian, what's your take on Lauletta?
I mean, I think I agree with you guys. I think it's you've got to give the kid a chance right now. When I look at him, I mean, look, is he going to be that much worse than what Eli Manning's doing right now?
Can't be worse.
And I think you have exactly. And if you don't give him an opportunity right now at this point of the season, how are you going to know? At least now at 1-6. The amount of games left, you've got a pretty good sample size to know what you got. I think it would be a great move. And Eli Manning, I mean, here's a guy to me that looks like he is absolutely shell-shocked. Just a guy that I think, what we saw in the past from him, an outstanding quarterback. But right now, this guy thinks there's pressure when there's not pressure. This guy is mentally done. And I'm not sure that even, I know I've seen a couple things where people say, well, hey, maybe trading him, get a little bit of value, maybe some, things like that. I don't even know that trade. I don't think teams are going to want to take that chance.
Would the Jaguars take a chance? I mean, they got Tom Coughlin down there in the front office.
That team is one that I've thought about, but I don't know. I don't know that you want to take a chance on a guy that's a pretty shell-shocked quarterback right now.
Well, I can tell you this, though. If I had Blake Bortles playing quarterback for me with that much talent on a football team, I might take the chance on Eli there.
You might.
Because he can't be worse than Blake Bortles.
Well, no. But at this point, I think Giants have got to make that move. And there comes a point, and I saw this yesterday where somebody was saying, the problem with the Giants being in that New York market is they don't want to be a team that's rebuilding. I think that horse has left the barn. I think it's time you've got to start rebuilding. And you're 1-6 with Eli Manning. You got to start building. You got to know what you got at that quarterback position for the long term. So I think that's a move that they've got to make. But even with some of the play calling, the Giants in that Falcons game, there was some very, very sketchy play calling at times, especially at the end. And I don't know. I don't know what's worse, Eli Manning or some of the coaching decisions. But really, we're seeing that in the NFL with some teams. Just some very sketchy coaching decisions. Very, for guys that are making millions of dollars, for people like me that, I'm not making millions of dollars, and you just look at it and go, well, why are you doing this? Just too much overthinking, and we're seeing a lot of that.
So are you talking of Mike Vrabel?
You name it.
Because with Vrabel, and I'll get both your opinions, I don't mind going for the win. I never do. My only problem is you get the penalty and you're a yard and a half away. If you can't line up and just stuff that ball in the end zone, there's some problems.
Exactly. And we'll go back, not to pick on the Bengals because of you, Mike, but just the coaching decisions at times that are there, just what are you doing?
What would make you think you're picking on me? I am always the first one to bitch about Marvin Lewis.
The Cowboys with Garrett at times, some of the decisions that are made. It just seems like the coaching in the NFL is just it's not at its best. Guys like Belichick. Belichick's Belichick. But boy, once you start going down from Belichick, it does start dropping rather steeply in terms of the good quality coaching in the NFL right now.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and go to Week 8 in the NFL. We'll start off with Thursday night, which is actually a good matchup now and a huge game, Tony. We get the Miami Dolphins, who are coming off a big loss to the Detroit Lions. I think they're 4-3 now, playing the Houston Texans, who are on a winning streak. I don't know if you can say they're playing well enough to call them hot. But who do you like in this one, Tony?
I saw a stat. The Adam Gase career on Thursday nights with the Dolphins is absolutely abysmal. I don't know if it's the short week. I don't know what they get from that. I like the Texans right now. I think that it's a situation where Deshaun Watson's starting to get his legs back a little bit. They're finding a little bit in the running game. I still think with Hopkins and the talent on defense that they can turn it around. I'm going to take the Texans.
I'm going to take the Texans also, Brian. I just think they're the better team. I'm not an Adam Gase fan, and he's one of the guys, when you talk about poor coaches in the NFL, you have to put Adam Gase in there.
Yeah, you do, and I'm taking the Texans as well. Look, even when the Dolphins were winning early on, they never passed that look test for me, and now I think we're seeing who they really are, and the Texans are a good football team. That they're not a Super Bowl team or anything like, but they're a good football team. That I just think they're just on paper. I just think they're a lot better than the Dolphins, and his Thursday night record, Gates' Thursday night record is just so bad. So I think that's just another addition to the Texans.
Tony, if I remember right, he's so bad on Thursday night, he even lost to the Bengals on a primetime Thursday night game and got shut out last year.
He did.
Yeah, and that never happens. So that should say it all right there.
All right, next up, we go to London. The Philadelphia Eagles, who lost again, now sitting at 3-4 in the NFC East, will go play the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know. I think the Jaguars' second home is London. When I look at this game, I think Doug Peterson's a better coach than what Jacksonville's got, and I think Jacksonville just offensively has no identity without Leonard Fournette. Blake Bortles has been a mess. I'm going with the Eagles, Brian.
I am too. Boy, Jacksonville is just so bad right now. That was almost embarrassing to a certain extent Sunday. And I obviously didn't, really. I just seeing the highlights and reading about that game. It just seemed like that was just an embarrassment.
Well, remember last week they lost 40-7. So.
Yeah. So I think the Eagles are going to win this. I think they're going to win it rather easily.
All right, Tony.
Yeah, I don't get to see a lot of the Jaguars, but I watched Dallas-Washington this weekend. Dallas is a bad football team. Everyone talks about the Jaguars' defense, and the Cowboys somehow put up 40 on that team. Blake Bortles is a mess. The whole thing with having a short leash, that doesn't help Blake Bortles or the backup quarterback. Make a decision and go with it. I think this game means a lot more to Doug Peterson and the Eagles, who obviously going up 17-0 into the fourth quarter against Carolina. You're thinking you get a win there. I think they have to get a win here. They play as the more aggressive and hungry team, and they come out of there with a win.
All right, you talked about the Carolina Panthers, who had the big come-from-behind victory on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. They will host the Baltimore Ravens, and this is another big matchup here. The Ravens' defense against the Panthers' defense. Joe Flacco, who's played well this year, and then you got Cam Newton, who, even if he doesn't play well, seems to make the plays to give his teams a chance to win the game. Tony, Ravens and Panthers, who do you like?
Yeah, I think Cam is making enough plays. I think obviously getting Greg Olsen back helps out a ton. And that defense, now you got Thomas Davis getting back into the swing of things. You still got Luke Kuechly. They're making plays. On the other side of the ball, the Ravens, obviously a heartbreaking loss. I just don't think the Ravens travel as well with obviously that great defense. I don't think Flacco makes enough plays, so I'm going to take Carolina.
Well, I think this, when I look at it, the Panthers may be able to run the ball with Christian McCaffrey. The problem with the Ravens is there's almost no running game. They're averaging like 3 yards a carry. And with no running game, you're playing the Panthers. I'm going to go with the Panthers in this game, Brian. I think it'll probably be a close game, but I'm going to lean with the home team in this. If they were playing in Baltimore, I would probably lean towards Baltimore. I just think this is an even matchup pretty much all the way around, except the Ravens' lack of a running game.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Panthers as well. I think it being so even, I'm going to take the home team. But also, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me like the Panthers seem to play a little bit better at home, historically, especially the last few years. It seems like they play really well at home. And the Ravens, I love their head coach. Flacco's having a good year, but this team just, even when they beat Pittsburgh, they don't jump off the page at me. And I think Carolina's a decent football team, so I think this will be a good game, and I'll take the Panthers at home.
All right, the Denver Broncos will go to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Broncos are coming off a huge 45-10 win. The Chiefs, well, I don't even remember how bad they beat the Bengals, but I think it was pretty much about the same thing, 45-10. I'm going with the Chiefs here. Brian, I don't think there's any reason not to, because I don't think there's any way in the world the Denver Broncos could score enough points to beat the Chiefs. We know the Chiefs, even if the Broncos play well, are going to score 27 points, and I just don't see Denver scoring that many points.
Yeah, this Chiefs team is a really good team, especially offensively. And we've said it a few times on the show. With the Chiefs, as they get later in the season, the playoffs, they seem to fall off. And I just really feel like this team is not one that's going to fall off. I think they're just so much better offensively. Mahomes is just so dynamic, and they've got really good, weapons around him that they utilize everybody. I don't know that this is a team that's going to fall off as the year goes on, and I don't see him falling off in this one, so I'll take Chiefs.
All right, Tony.
Yeah, I think Denver had the chance in Denver to get Kansas City. They didn't do it. Kansas City at home is as good as they are normally. They're a completely different animal at home. So many weapons. Andy Reid has a way to get every guy the ball on that team. I think the Chiefs win this one pretty easy.
All right, next up, we got Schmidt's Cleveland Browns. Schmidt's Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Cleveland Browns. I actually didn't mean to say that, Brian, but sorry. I didn't mean to insinuate that you're a Cleveland Browns fan, but that would mean you have even a lower IQ than a Pittsburgh Steelers fan does. So, Brian, when you look at this, Browns or Steelers?
We're going to take Pittsburgh, but I will say this. Do not be surprised that this is not a close game. Browns
I'll be surprised if it doesn't go to overtime.
Well, I mean, the Browns have been that kind of team this year, but Pittsburgh coming off of a big win in a bye week and then having a subpar team coming off bye week, that has not been in Tomlin's career. And we talk about Marvin Lewis. I mean, you can say a lot of the same things about Tomlin. That has not been good. This is one that scares me because you look historically coming off bye weeks, especially against teams that on paper that Pittsburgh should dominate. They have lost their fair share of those games and been in dogfights in the other fair share. Very rarely do they come in and just put those kind of teams away. So I'm gonna take the Steelers, but don't be surprised if this game's not close.
All right, I think the Steelers are going to blow the Browns out. I think the Browns are going to start getting blown out. I think Hugh Jackson's not a very good football coach. They were close for a few weeks, and last week we talked about this. I think it was on this show that the last couple of years they've been close the first 4 or 5 games of the season. Everybody freaks out that they're better. I think as long as Hugh Jackson's there, they're kind of like the Cincinnati Bengals. They're only going to be so good. And Hugh Jackson, I think, is even worse than Marvin Lewis, Tony. So I'm going with the Steelers.
Yeah, I like the point that because the Steelers historically haven't been good out of the bye. But I think the fact that during the bye week, with the Bengals losing, they've jumped into first place. I think that's a little bit extra motivation. They're back at the top of that division. I think this is a chance for them to come out and make a statement with or without Le'Veon Bell that they can be a legit contender. And the Browns, with as much overtime as they've played, the defense has to start getting tired. I think the defense has kept them in a lot. I think Baker Mayfield can still do some good things for this team this year, but they're just going to run out of gas, and I think that starts this week trying to go to Pittsburgh.
All right, next up, the Seattle Seahawks go to Detroit to battle the Lions. It's a great quarterback matchup between Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson. When you look at this one, Tony, who do you like? This is a big game for the Lions. They get over 500 with this. They could actually make some noise in the NFC North.
Yeah, I think it is. I think when you look at Seattle, they're still a mess. Obviously, Russell Wilson helps out a ton. They're a mess on defense. Their offensive line's a mess. And the Lions at home in the Dome, I think, can pull this game out. This isn't the same Seahawks team we've seen over the last couple of years. Matthew Stafford, they finally got a semblance of a running game last week. I think that propels them there to beat Seattle.
All right, Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Lions at home. The Lions have been playing, fairly decently. And I think that, being Seattle, coming almost all the way to the East Coast, not quite, but almost, they're just not that kind of team that can do that well. And Lions been playing well, so I'll take the Lions at home.
Yeah, I'm taking the Lions also. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will travel to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Brian, do you think the Bengals will give up in this game early, or do you think they'll show up to play?
Oh, man, they better show up to play. I don't know that. Although, I know with you, I know Bengals fans learn to expect some of these things, but you cannot after last week, you better come out with some fire, and you cannot let this Buccaneers team hang around. You better put them away. I'm going to take the Bengals because I think they will rebound this week. But, boy, if this is a close game or they get upset by the Bucs, it's going to get crazy in Cincinnati.
Not really, because then it'll just be everybody calling for Marvin's head because the bye week, it would be the perfect time to fire Marvin Lewis. But then they'll give him an extra year on his contract, Tony. Buccaneers or Bengals?
Man, this to me at the start of the season was a guaranteed win for the Bengals. I'm scared to death right now as a Bengal fan of this Tampa Bay team coming in. You look at what Tampa Bay does well. Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans, two weapons. We've shown that we struggle guarding two top receivers. And tight ends this year have had an absolute field day. Our linebackers can't cover. I don't know if Vontaze Burfict plays. John Ross isn't going to play. I don't know if Giovanni Bernard, Darquez Denard, all those guys might be out in this game. Billy Price, and you look at what Tampa has, O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, two great matchups at tight end for them. I think Tampa scores points. I think they get to the 20, 21, 28 mark. But I'm relying on the Bengals offense to wake up and do something and win this game based on their offense. I hope that's right because if Tampa wins this game, it is going to be madness here in Cincinnati.
Well, I think Tampa Bay wins this game. I think the Bengals are done. Until Marvin Lewis is gone, I think this team is over with. It's the same thing I said when they played Pittsburgh. If they lose that game, they'll go into a tailspin. They're in a tailspin. I think the Bengals are done. I think the Bucs are going to score 35, 40 points, and I think they're going to win the game. I see a Bengals offensive line that is atrocious. I see linebackers. Vontaze Burfict, everybody worries about what he's going to do next. Maybe he should push himself away from a table and get on a workout machine at some point because, to me, he looks fat and slow. He's missing tackles he never missed before. I don't know why it's put up with, but it's put up with because of the same reason. The reason the Bengals suck is Mike Brown. Let's face it, if you're a player for the Bengals, you don't worry about pissing Marvin Lewis off because Marvin Lewis doesn't make the final decisions. And I know everybody says, well, he has more power now. I don't see that here, Tony. Am I way off base with this? Or?
No, I think that's spot on. And I think the question for Cincinnati, the Vontaze Burfict antics have always been worth it because Vontaze Burfict played at a high level. That's not the same Vontaze Burfict that's on the field for whatever reason right now. The Bengals had 18 missed tackles in one game against Kansas City. 18. That's incredible.
High school teams don't do that, Tony.
Game. No. But it is. It's a different team. Vontaze Burfict has got away with this for years. Now his production is slowed immensely, and he still gets away with this stuff. So until something changes with this organization and they go out and they try to get a big free agent or they make a big coaching move, it's going to be the same old thing, and that's what worries you as a Cincinnati fan.
It doesn't worry me. I expect it. It's been like this since Paul Brown died. Since 1991, it's been utter crap. And then you hear Collinsworth try to defend Marvin Lewis. Well, for 14 years before he was here, they didn't make the playoffs. To me, if you're not going to win in the playoffs, what's it matter if you're in them? I mean, as a young kid, I watched the Bengals win playoff games. I watched them go to 2 Super Bowls. I don't care to watch a first-round playoff loss anymore. I would like to see a team. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, honestly, the talk around Cincinnati, that game Sunday felt like the 90s. That felt like watching the same team from the 90s. And if that's where this team is reverting to and going to, then you got to do something and make some type of change.
Yeah, and the 90s were really bad. I don't know how old you were in the 90s, Tony. Do you remember the 90s?
I remember some of it, and I remember the Bengals being bad.
Oh,
so I'd like to not have to resort back to that.
Yeah, the only home games that would be sold out so you could see them is when they played Pittsburgh or Cleveland, because Pittsburgh or Cleveland would bring a bunch of people down. And it's just a joke. And I don't know. I got nothing else to say about it. The next game up, Jets at the Bears. I think the Jets are still a year or two away. I think this is a huge game for the Bears. They're in the NFC North. Everybody's kind of bunched up here, Brian. I'm taking the Bears. You agree?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bears. The game against New England, even being a loss, there was some things there that were impressive. Now, obviously, I don't think anybody expected 38 points from New England with the Bears defense, but the fact they scored 31 and they really fought and battled in that game. That's one thing with the Bears.
Yeah, but wait a second, Tony, or Brian, wasn't there like a kickoff return for one of those touchdowns, and then they have 2 defensive touchdowns?
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, the fact that that was a game that New England has historically usually blown teams out, but I mean, they did things on special teams. They did things defensively. They kept battling in that game, because there was a couple points in that game where New England looked like they were one more score away from running away with it, and Chicago always found a way to get back in it. I'm going to take Chicago. I like them at home. I think that Chicago is going to continue to be that team this year that just kind of battles.
All right, Tony?
I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm going to take the Jets as the upset this week. I just think so much was made with that Patriots game. You had Ron Gronkowski not in the game. Sony Michel went out with the knee injury. If you were going to beat the Patriots, I think it was going to be that day. They put so much into it. They came so close. I think it's natural to have some type of letdown. And the Jets, I agree, I think they're still a year or two away, but they've been competitive for the most part this year. I think they get the upset over Chicago this weekend.
All right, next up, we got the Washington Redskins playing at the New York Giants. Tony, I'll let you start off with this.
Oh, man,
great matchup.
Yeah, this is one of those matchups I would not watch if it was the only game on TV. The Giants are atrocious. I don't know what Shermer's doing. I don't know what Eli Manning is doing. I think it's fun to watch Saquon Barkley and Odell Beckham. But Washington, sitting atop of that division right now, is surprising a lot of people. Adrian Peterson's playing great. Alex Smith is managing the game. They got a really good defense. I think they find a way to win another big game.
All right. I'm going with the Redskins also, unless Kyle Laletta plays, and then I might change my pick. Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Redskins as well. For really the same reasons you guys are. I mean, the Giants are just so bad.
All right, next up, we've got the Indianapolis Colts at the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders are in a, shall we say, a little bit of a mess. The Colts, on the other hand, are a team that, I mean, they just beat the Bills. That's one. I think the Colts, before this is over with, are going to make a run at the playoffs with Andrew Luck. And everybody thinks I'm crazy with this, but they go to the Raiders, they host the Jags, then they host the Titans, they host the Dolphins, they go to the Jags. I mean, the Texans, then they play the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Titans. I think the Colts are going to win the AFC South. Am I nuts, Tony?
I could certainly see them making a run. They're just gonna. It's gonna be hard because they're not going to have the ability to slip up at all. I think Andrew Luck has far exceeded expectations from coming back from the injury. I'm impressed with him and that offense. They finally seem to be finding a semblance of a running game. I'm not sold on them for the season yet, but I do think they'd be a Raiders team that's in absolute shambles.
All right, Brian, I know you think I'm nuts.
Well, yeah, you're always nuts, but on this one, I don't think you're nuts. But I'll take the Colts. I agree with you. I think the Colts will lose one or two of those games in there. But I definitely think they'll be a team contending for the AFC South at the end. So I'll take the Colts in this. I just not a big Raiders guy right now.
All right, next up, we got the 49ers at the Cardinals, which is a game battling to see who's going to be the number one pick. The Cardinals beat them a few weeks ago. I think the Cardinals are going to beat them again, Brian.
Yeah, I'll take the Cardinals, but
they're both
this
terrible.
Is kind of like the Redskins Giants.
Yeah,
this is like the Redskins Giants. This was the only team this is the only game that was on TV. I watched a movie.
All right,
I'll take the Cardinals.
So, Tony, I think the 49ers and Cardinals is infinitely worse than the Redskins and Giants.
Yeah, I take back my statement. This is the game I will not watch. If we were picking ties on this show, this is the game of the week. I would pick the tie just because it's going to be terrible football on both sides. I guess because of that, I'll just take the home team and take the Cardinals.
All right, next up, the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers go to L.A. to battle the Rams and to get beaten half to death. Do you agree with me, Tony?
Yeah, I think they're going to get beat. This is the largest deficit point spread that Aaron Rodgers has ever been a part of in the opposite direction, being the underdog. If this is in Green Bay, maybe they have a fighting chance because I think Aaron Rodgers is getting on a good page with that young receiving core. But the fact that this is in L.A., with the Rams, I'm going to take the Rams to continue rolling. But I don't think it's going to be as lopsided as the 9.5 spread would say.
I think it will. Just because I don't think the Packers defense is going to be able to slow the Rams down at all. I think you could end up seeing like 41-27. Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Rams. I've seen some people talk about the Rams maybe being a 16-0 team. I still don't believe that. But I definitely think that this is a game they're going to be up for and a game that they're going to win. And I could see it being a 41-27 kind of a game.
All right, next up, we've got a huge battle in the NFC. It's the New Orleans Saints on Sunday night will travel to Minnesota to play the Vikings to get a little bit of revenge for last year's playoffs. Tony, will they get that revenge, or will the Vikings beat them again?
Man, I early on in the year, the Vikings were struggling. The Saints as well. They snuck by, obviously, the Cleveland game. I like the move for the Saints going out and get Eli Apple. They're trying to make that defense better because they're always going to score points. To me, the Saints just aren't the same when they're not at home. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Vikings. I think the Vikings have figured some stuff out. Latavius Murray ran the ball well last week. Obviously, Adam Thielen was at 6 or 7 games now going over 100 yards. It's been incredible. They still have Stephon Diggs. Cousins playing at a high level. I like the Vikings in this one.
All right, I'm going with the Saints. I think the Saints are a better team. I trust Drew Brees more than Kirk Cousins. I think this is a close game. This is a toss-up. I'm going to go with the Saints, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Saints as well. I think this is a toss-up, yes, but I think this is one that the Saints definitely should be winning. So I'll take the Saints.
All right, next up, the Monday night game. And this is a game that could do battle with the Cardinals and 49ers for the worst game of the week. The New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say New England, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going to say New England as well. Wow, this is another one of those great Monday night matchups.
Tony?
Yeah, I'll say this one thing about the game before. I'll guarantee that the Saints-Vikings is better than the Sunday night game from this week. I wanted to make that my guarantee.
So you just wanted to take another dig at poor Marvin Lewis.
Yeah.
Now,
I think
any Bengal fans that hear this now are going to turn on you and say that you obviously hate the home team. You know how they do Chris Collinsworth.
I just think that this will be like a closer than a 35-point margin. But for the Patriots Bills, it's going to be terrible. The Patriots will roll. This will be one of those games where like Josh Gordon has a coming out party with like 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that offense becomes even scarier with Edelman and Gronk now.
All right, and next week we have to look forward to, since Matt will be back on the show, the first game we'll pick will be the Thursday night game between the Oakland Raiders and the San Francisco 49ers. So that's another classic matchup.
Might also be a Thursday night game I don't tune into.
Yeah, too bad they can't flex out the Thursday night games from time to time. There's some stinkers there. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this week's show up, and we apologize. Matt Andruscavage has not been with us this week, but he was in San Francisco taking pictures of poop in the streets. Brian, any final words?
No, be interesting to see what happens this week on a few of these games. I do think that, we're starting to see that separation between the haves and have-nots a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if we continue to see that, or if we continue, if we see a few upsets this week. But I'm not feeling like there's going to be a lot of upsets this week.
All right. Tony, any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I just think that to piggyback on Brian from earlier in the show, I'm interested to see this coaching carousel that continues during the season. I mean, it's not just the bad teams. Doug Peterson, after talking about how he spends 18 hours a day watching film, loses after being up 17-0. The Hugh Jackson scenario, Pat Shurmur, the Titans going for 2. There's a lot of questionable coaching decisions from guys that are making a lot of money. And I just think and obviously, we've talked in length of the Marvin Lewis situation here in Cincinnati. I think it's going to be interesting how this season ends up and what coaches are put on the hot seat and what coaches don't retain jobs and how that gets filled. I think the problem in the NFL, it's a buddy system. When a guy gets fired, he's able to land at another
exactly.
team. And I think when you look at the Rams and why they're having so much success, that's a young coach that has a different coaching philosophy that's able to get these players to buy into different stuff. And I think you need to see a little bit more of that other than coaches flipping teams and catching on somewhere else. Those days need to be done in the NFL. There needs to be some new blood and new faces come in to kind of cope with how this league is changing. It's not the 3 yards in a cloud of dust anymore. It's a pass-happy, offensive-happy league. And you need coaches that can work with that. And I hope that's something that teams are willing to do when you see the success of the Rams this year.
Well, I don't know if there's really been too many teams ever willing to do that. I mean, look at all the head coaches that, hire their sons to be assistant coaches that have no experience either. And the thing that stood out to me was this. On the Grueling Truth Facebook page today, we ran a poll with Cleveland Browns fans, should Hugh Jackson be fired? And it was 50-50. The guy's won 3 games in 3 years. You run the same poll on a few Bengals sites, and it's like 85% want Marvin gone. So I think that tells us one thing. If there is a fan base more pathetic than Cincinnati, it's Cleveland. I mean, you win 3 games in 3 years, and you're good. Half the people still want you there. Yep. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. Tomorrow at noon, me and Steve Risley will be back with Survive in Advance. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, me, Steve, and Colin Hartman will be on with the Indiana Basketball Show. And then Robert Drummond will be on for the CFL Weekly Pick'em Show at 9:30 tonight, or 9:30 tomorrow night. You can hear all that on thegruelingtruth.net live. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Tony Pike, Brian Schmidt, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.